Maya Chun had always believed that love was the most valuable thing a person could possess. Growing up in a modest apartment above her grandmother's small bakery in the older part of the city, she learned early that happiness had nothing to do with wealth. Her grandmother, Eleanor, was a woman of simple means but extraordinary grace. She had raised Maya alone after Maya's parents died in a car accident when Maya was only 3 years old. The bakery, called Sweet Dreams, had been in the family for decades, and, though it never made them rich, it provided enough for a comfortable life filled with the warm smell of fresh bread and the sweet scent of cinnamon rolls. Maya grew into a beautiful young woman with kind eyes and a gentle spirit. She had long dark hair that fell past her shoulders and a smile that could light up the darkest room. But what made Maya truly special was not her appearance. It was her heart. She volunteered at the local homeless shelter every weekend. She helped elderly neighbors carry their groceries. She spent her evenings reading to children at the community center. Everyone in the neighborhood knew Maya, and everyone loved her. When Maya turned 22, she graduated from the local community college with a degree in social work. Her grandmother had saved for years to help pay for her education, and Maya had worked part-time at the bakery to cover the rest. She was proud of what she had accomplished, even if her degree was not from a fancy university. She had plans to help people, to make a difference in the world, and she believed with all her heart that she would find a way to do just that. It was on a rainy Tuesday evening in March when Maya first met Daniel Morrison. She had been rushing home from the shelter, her umbrella broken by a sudden gust of wind, when she literally ran into him on the corner of 5th and Main. He was tall and handsome, with sandy brown hair and blue eyes that seemed to sparkle even in the gray light of the storm. When their bodies collided, Maya's bag fell to the ground, spilling its contents across the wet sidewalk. Daniel immediately dropped to his knees to help her gather her things. His expensive suit was getting soaked, but he did not seem to care. He handed her a worn copy of her favorite book, which had fallen from her bag, and smiled. "You have good taste," he said, nodding at the book. "This is one of my favorites, too." Maya felt her cheeks flush. She thanked him and tried to hurry away, embarrassed by her clumsiness, but Daniel stopped her. "Please let me buy you a coffee," he said. "You're soaked, and there's a cafe right around the corner. It's the least I can do for almost knocking you down." Maya hesitated. She was not the type to accept invitations from strangers. But there was something about Daniel's eyes, something warm and genuine, that made her feel safe. Against her better judgment, she agreed. That coffee turned into 3 hours of conversation. Daniel told her about his job at his family's investment firm, about his love of old books and classic movies, about his dreams of traveling the world. Maya told him about her grandmother, about the bakery, about her hopes of opening a community center for underprivileged youth. By the time they left the cafe, the rain had stopped, and Maya felt like she had known Daniel her entire life. They began dating the following week. Daniel was unlike anyone Maya had ever met. He sent her flowers for no reason. He showed up at the bakery with coffee and pastries. He listened when she talked about her work at the shelter, and he never made her feel like her dreams were too small or unimportant. For the first time in her life, Maya allowed herself to believe in the possibility of true love. 6 months into their relationship, Daniel took Maya to meet his family. She was nervous, more nervous than she had ever been. She had bought a new dress for the occasion, a simple blue one that her grandmother said brought out her eyes. She had styled her hair carefully and practiced smiling in the mirror. She wanted so badly to make a good impression. The Morrison estate was unlike anything Maya had ever seen. It sat on 50 acres of manicured land outside the city, a sprawling mansion with white columns and fountains and gardens that seemed to stretch on forever. As Daniel's car pulled up the long driveway, Maya felt her stomach tighten with anxiety. She had known Daniel came from money, but she had not understood what that truly meant until this moment. Daniel squeezed her hand reassuringly. "Don't worry," he said. "They're going to love you." But Daniel was wrong. Victoria Morrison, Daniel's mother, was a tall, elegant woman with perfectly styled silver hair and cold gray eyes. She wore diamonds at her throat and wrists, and her smile when she greeted Maya was polite but distant. William Morrison, Daniel's father, was a large man with a booming voice and a handshake that felt more like a power move than a greeting. He looked Maya up and down as if assessing her value, and she could see in his eyes that he found her lacking. Daniel's younger sister, Charlotte, was the worst of all. She was 24, just 2 years older than Maya, but she carried herself with the arrogance of someone who had never been denied anything in her life. She wore designer clothes and expensive jewelry, and she made no effort to hide her disdain for Maya from the moment they met. "So," Charlotte said during dinner, her voice dripping with false sweetness, "Daniel tells us you work at a homeless shelter. How charitable of you. I suppose someone has to do that sort of work." Maya felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment, but she kept her composure. "I enjoy it," she said quietly. "Helping people gives my life meaning." Charlotte laughed, a sharp, unkind sound. "How quaint." Victoria changed the subject, asking Daniel about his work at the firm, and Maya was grateful for the reprieve. But she could feel the family's judgment pressing down on her like a weight. They asked about her background, her education, her family. When she told them about the bakery, about her grandmother raising her alone, Charlotte could barely contain her smirk. "A baker's granddaughter," Charlotte said later, when Daniel had stepped away to take a phone call. "How romantic, like something out of a fairy tale. The poor girl and the prince." Maya did not respond. She had learned long ago that some battles were not worth fighting. But as she sat in that magnificent dining room, surrounded by wealth and privilege, she could not help but wonder if she would ever truly belong in Daniel's world. Despite his family's obvious disapproval, Daniel continued to pursue Maya with unwavering devotion. He told her that his family's opinions did not matter, that he loved her for who she was, not where she came from. And Maya, who had never been loved like this before, believed him. 1 year after their first meeting, Daniel proposed. They were sitting on a bench in the park where they had shared their first real kiss. And Daniel got down on one knee with a diamond ring that Maya knew must have cost more than her grandmother made in a year. She said yes through tears of joy, and, for a moment, she allowed herself to believe that all her dreams were coming true. The wedding was a small affair, much to Victoria Morrison's displeasure. Maya had wanted something intimate, something meaningful, and Daniel had agreed. They were married in a little chapel by the sea, with only close friends and family in attendance. Eleanor Chun was there, of course, beaming with pride as she watched her granddaughter walk down the aisle. The Morrisons were there too, their smiles forced and their congratulations hollow, but Maya tried not to let their coldness dampen her joy. After the wedding, Daniel and Maya moved into a beautiful townhouse that Daniel had purchased for them. It was more house than Maya had ever imagined living in, but she did her best to make it feel like home. She hung pictures on the walls and planted flowers in the garden and filled the kitchen with the smell of fresh-baked bread, just like her grandmother had taught her. For the first few months, everything seemed perfect. Daniel was attentive and loving. He came home from work every evening with stories about his day and genuine interest in hers. They cooked dinner together, took long walks in the park, and talked for hours about their hopes and dreams. Maya had never been happier, but slowly things began to change. It started with small things. Daniel began working longer hours, coming home later and later each night. When he was home, he seemed distracted, his mind elsewhere. He stopped asking about Maya's day and started spending more time on his phone, texting and emailing people whose names Maya did not recognize. Then there were the family dinners. Victoria insisted that Daniel and Maya attend Sunday dinner at the estate every week, and each gathering was more painful than the last. The Morrisons made no effort to include Maya in their conversations. They talked about people she did not know, places she had never been, events she could not afford to attend. And always there were the subtle jabs. "Maya, dear, That dress is lovely, Victoria would say, her eyes scanning Maya's outfit with barely concealed disdain. Did you find it at one of those discount stores? I hear they have such affordable options these days. How is your little shelter doing? Charlotte would ask, her voice dripping with condescension. Still saving the world one homeless person at a time? Maya bore these insults with quiet dignity. She had promised herself that she would not let the Morrisons get to her, that she would prove them wrong by being the best wife she could be. But each cruel word, each dismissive glance, chipped away at her confidence, leaving her feeling small and worthless. One evening, about 8 months after the wedding, Maya was preparing dinner when she suddenly felt dizzy. The room spun around her, and she had to grab the counter to keep from falling. The dizziness passed after a moment, but it left her shaken. She had been feeling tired lately, more tired than usual, and there had been other symptoms too. Headaches that would not go away, a constant feeling of weakness in her limbs, a strange numbness in her fingers and toes. She tried to brush it off, telling herself it was just stress. The situation with Daniel's family had been weighing on her, and she had not been sleeping well. But when the symptoms continued, growing worse with each passing day, she knew she could no longer ignore them. Maya made an appointment with her doctor, not telling Daniel about it. She did not want to worry him, not when things between them had already become so strained. She went alone, sitting in the sterile waiting room with her hands clasped in her lap, trying to convince herself that everything would be fine. But everything was not fine. The doctor ran tests, many tests, and when the results came back, he called Maya into his office with a grave expression on his face. "Mrs. Morrison," he said, his voice gentle but serious, "I'm afraid I have some difficult news." Maya sat very still, her heart pounding in her chest. She had known, somehow she had known, that something was wrong, but nothing could have prepared her for what the doctor said next. She had a rare autoimmune disease, one that attacked the body's own tissues and organs. It was chronic, meaning it would never fully go away. It could be managed with medication and treatment, but there would be periods of remission followed by periods of severe symptoms. Some patients lived relatively normal lives with the condition. Others were not so lucky. Maya listened in silence as the doctor explained the disease, the treatment options, the lifestyle changes she would need to make. She nodded in all the right places and asked the questions she knew she should ask. But inside, she felt like she was drowning, like the world she had built so carefully was crumbling around her. When she got home that evening, Daniel was already there, sitting in the living room with a glass of whiskey in his hand. He looked up when she came in, and, for a moment, something like concern flickered in his eyes. "You look pale," he said. "Are you feeling all right?" Maya sat down across from him and took a deep breath. She had decided on the drive home that she would tell him everything, that she would not keep this secret from him. He was her husband, and he deserved to know. Together, they would face this challenge, just as they had faced everything else. "Daniel," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "I went to the doctor today. I have something to tell you." She explained everything, the symptoms, the tests, the diagnosis. She told him about the treatment plan, about the medications she would need to take, about the possibility of difficult days ahead. Through it all, Daniel sat in silence, his expression unreadable. When she finished, there was a long pause. Maya waited for him to come to her, to hold her, to tell her that everything would be okay. But he did not move. "This is going to be expensive," he said finally. "The treatments, the medications. And what about when you can't work? What then?" Maya felt like she had been slapped. Of all the things she had expected him to say, this was not it. "I have insurance," she said quietly. "And I plan to keep working as long as I can. Daniel, I know this is hard to hear, but we can get through this together." Daniel finished his whiskey and stood up. "I need to think," he said. "This is a lot to process." He walked out of the room, leaving Maya sitting alone in the fading light. She wanted to cry, but the tears would not come. She felt numb, hollow, like something essential had been taken from her. That night, Maya lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling while Daniel slept beside her. She had believed, truly believed, that he loved her. But love was supposed to be there in the hard times, not just the easy ones. Love was supposed to mean standing together when things fell apart. If Daniel could not do that, if he could not be there for her when she needed him most, then what did they really have? She thought about her grandmother, about the way Eleanor had devoted her entire life to raising Maya after her parents died. That was love. Unconditional, unwavering, true. It did not come with conditions or qualifications. It did not disappear when things got difficult. Maya closed her eyes and made a promise to herself. No matter what happened, no matter how bad things got, she would face this illness with courage and grace. She would not let it define her, and she would not let anyone make her feel like she was a burden. She was still Maya Chan, the girl who had grown up above a bakery, the woman who had dedicated her life to helping others. No disease could take that away from her. But, as she finally drifted off to sleep, she could not shake the feeling that the hardest days were still ahead. The next morning, Maya woke to find Daniel already gone. There was a note on the kitchen counter saying he had an early meeting and would be home late. She crumpled the note in her hand and threw it in the trash. She knew, with a certainty that settled deep in her bones, that something fundamental had shifted between them. The man who had once promised to love her forever had shown his true colors last night, and they were not the colors she had hoped to see. Maya poured herself a cup of coffee and sat at the kitchen table, watching the morning light filter through the windows. She had decisions to make, important ones about her health, her marriage, and her future. But, for now, she just sat and breathed, gathering her strength for the battles to come. Her phone rang, breaking the silence. It was her grandmother. Maya, sweetheart. Eleanor's warm voice came through the line. I had a feeling I should call. Is everything all right? Maya hesitated. She had not planned to tell her grandmother about the diagnosis so soon, not wanting to worry her. But, hearing Eleanor's voice, so full of love and concern, broke something open inside her. Grandma, she said, her voice cracking. I need to tell you something. She told Eleanor everything, just as she had told Daniel. But the response was completely different. There were no questions about money, no concerns about inconvenience. There was only love, pure and simple. Oh, my darling girl, Eleanor said, her own voice thick with emotion. I'm so sorry, but you listen to me. You are strong, stronger than you know. And you are not alone in this. I am here, and I will always be here, no matter what. Maya finally allowed herself to cry, the tears streaming down her face as her grandmother's words washed over her like a healing balm. This was what love looked like. This was what it felt like. And even as her marriage crumbled and her health failed, Maya knew that as long as she had her grandmother, she would never truly be alone. She wiped her eyes and took a deep breath. Thank you, Grandma, she said. I needed to hear that. You come see me soon, Eleanor said firmly. We'll bake something together, just like old times. There's nothing in this world that can't be made a little better with fresh bread and good company. Maya smiled despite herself. I'd like that, she said. I'd like that a lot. After she hung up the phone, Maya sat for a long moment, thinking. Her grandmother was right. She was strong. She had faced hard things before and she had survived. She would survive this too. But first she had to face the Morrisons. Sunday dinner came around as it always did, and Maya braced herself for what she knew would be an ordeal. She had told Daniel that she wanted to skip this week, given everything that had happened, but he had insisted. My mother will ask questions if we don't come, he said. I don't want to have to explain. So Maya put on a brave face and a nice dress, and she went to the Morrison estate with her husband. She was not going to hide from these people. She was not going to let them see her fear. The dinner started out as it always did, with pointed remarks and thinly veiled insults. Maya sat quietly, eating little, conserving her energy. She had been feeling weaker lately, the disease making its presence known in ways large and small. But she held her head high and refused to show any sign of vulnerability. Then Charlotte asked the question that changed everything. "You look tired, Maya," she said, her voice carrying across the table. "Are you not sleeping well? Marriage troubles already?" Before Maya could respond, Daniel spoke up. "Actually," he said, his voice oddly flat, "Maya has been diagnosed with a chronic illness. She's going to need a lot of treatment." The table went silent. Maya stared at Daniel in disbelief. She had not planned to tell his family about her condition. Not yet, not like this. But Daniel had taken that choice away from her, announcing her private health information like it was just another piece of dinner conversation. Victoria's perfectly manicured hand flew to her chest. "An illness?" she said, her eyes narrowing. "What kind of illness?" Maya found her voice. "It's a rare autoimmune disease," she said, keeping her tone as steady as she could. "It's manageable with treatment." "Manageable?" William repeated, his expression skeptical. "And how much does this management cost?" "The treatments are expensive," Daniel said, before Maya could respond. "And there's no guarantee they'll work. She could end up bedridden for months at a time." Maya felt a cold rage building inside her. The way Daniel was talking about her, as if she were not even in the room, as if she were a problem to be solved rather than a person to be loved, was beyond hurtful. It was dehumanizing. Charlotte leaned forward, her eyes gleaming with barely concealed satisfaction. "How unfortunate," she said. "And here I thought Daniel had finally found someone who would be an asset to this family. Turns out she's just another liability." Maya stood up from the table, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "I am not a liability," she said, her voice shaking with emotion. "I am a person who is going through something difficult and who deserves compassion, not contempt." She looked at Daniel, hoping against hope that he would stand up for her, that he would tell his family they were out of line. But he just sat there, staring at his plate, saying nothing. Victoria dabbed at her lips with her napkin. "Perhaps you should sit down, dear," she said coolly. "Making a scene is hardly going to help your situation." Maya shook her head. "No," she said. I'm done. I'm done sitting quietly while you people tear me apart. I may be sick, but I am not broken. And I refuse to let any of you treat me like I am less than I am." She turned and walked out of the dining room, her heart pounding in her chest. She half expected Daniel to come after her, but he did not. She walked all the way to the front door, stepped outside into the cool evening air, and called a cab to take her home. As she waited in the darkness, Maya thought about her life and the choices that had brought her to this moment. She had married Daniel because she loved him, because she believed he loved her. But love, true love, did not look like this. True love did not leave you standing alone in the cold while your spouse sat silent at his family's table. The cab arrived, and Maya climbed in, giving the driver the address of her grandmother's bakery instead of her own home. She needed comfort tonight, and she knew exactly where to find it. When she arrived at Sweet Dreams, the lights were still on in the apartment above the shop. Maya climbed the familiar stairs and knocked on the door. When Eleanor opened it and saw her granddaughter standing there, tears streaming down her face, she did not ask any questions. She simply opened her arms and pulled Maya into a warm embrace. "I've got you, sweetheart," she whispered. "Whatever it is, we'll face it together." And standing there in her grandmother's arms, surrounded by the smell of sugar and cinnamon, Maya allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, everything would be okay. Maya stayed at her grandmother's apartment that night, sleeping in her old bedroom, the one she had grown up in. The walls were still painted the soft lavender color she had chosen as a teenager, and the bookshelf still held her favorite novels, their spines worn from years of rereading. Being here felt like stepping back in time, to a simpler era when her biggest worry was passing her exams, and her greatest joy was helping her grandmother frost cupcakes for the morning rush. She woke the next morning to the smell of fresh bread drifting up from the bakery below. For a moment, she forgot everything that had happened. She was just a girl waking up in her childhood home, safe and loved. Then, reality came flooding back, and the weight of her situation settled heavily on her chest. Maya got dressed and went downstairs, where Eleanor was already hard at work, pulling trays of golden loaves from the old stone oven. The bakery was small but warm, with exposed brick walls and wooden display cases filled with pastries and cakes. A few early customers sat at the handful of tables near the window, enjoying their coffee and breakfast. Eleanor looked up when Maya appeared and smiled. "There's my girl," she said. "Sit down. I'll make you something to eat." Maya did not argue. She sat at the small table in the corner of the kitchen, the one where she had done her homework as a child, and watched her grandmother move around the space with practiced ease. Eleanor was 72 years old now, and her hair had gone completely white, but she was still strong and capable, her movements efficient and graceful. "You want to talk about it?" Eleanor asked, setting a plate of warm bread and butter in front of Maya. Maya picked at the bread, not feeling hungry. "Daniel told his family about my illness," she said quietly. "At dinner. Just announced it like it was nothing. And then they started talking about how much the treatment would cost, like I was some kind of financial burden." Eleanor's expression darkened. "And what did Daniel say when they spoke about you that way?" "Nothing." Maya's voice was barely above a whisper. "He just sat there. He didn't defend me, didn't say a word. I walked out, and he didn't even come after me." Eleanor was silent for a long moment, her hands busy kneading a fresh batch of dough. When she spoke, her voice was calm but firm. "Maya, I want you to listen to me carefully. I've lived a long time and I've seen a lot of marriages, good ones and bad ones. And I've learned that you can tell a lot about a person by how they treat their partner when times get hard." Maya looked up at her grandmother, tears pricking at her eyes. "I know," she said. "I keep hoping that he'll change, that the Daniel I fell in love with is still in there somewhere. But last night, the way he looked at me, the way he talked about me, it was like I didn't even know him." Eleanor wiped her hands on her apron and came to sit across from Maya. She took her granddaughter's hands in her own, her grip warm and steady. "Sometimes people show us who they really are only when we're at our most vulnerable. And when that happens, we have to believe them." Maya nodded, the tears spilling over now. "What am I supposed to do, Grandma? I'm sick. I don't have any money of my own. And my husband, the person who was supposed to love me through everything, can barely look at me." "First," Eleanor said firmly, "you are going to stop thinking of yourself as helpless. You are not helpless. You have survived harder things than this. You lost your parents when you were just a baby, and you grew up to be a kind, strong, beautiful woman. This illness, this marriage, they are challenges, yes. But they do not define you." Maya wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "I don't feel strong right now." "Strength isn't about feeling strong," Eleanor said. "It's about doing what needs to be done even when you feel like you can't. And right now, what needs to be done is for you to take care of yourself. Your health comes first. Everything else, the marriage, Daniel's family, all of that can wait." Maya stayed at the bakery for 3 days. She helped her grandmother with the morning rush, feeling some of her old joy return as she decorated cupcakes and chatted with regular customers. She went to her follow-up doctor's appointment and started her new medication. She slept in her childhood bed and ate her grandmother's cooking and slowly began to feel like herself again. Daniel called several times, but Maya did not answer. She was not ready to talk to him, not yet. She needed time to think, to figure out what she wanted, to decide if her marriage was worth saving. On the 4th day, Daniel showed up at the bakery. Maya was behind the counter when he walked in, her hands covered in flour from helping roll out pie crusts. She froze when she saw him, her heart beginning to race. He looked tired, his usually perfect hair disheveled, his suit wrinkled. There were dark circles under his eyes, as if he had not been sleeping. Maya, he said, his voice strained. Please, we need to talk. The few customers in the bakery turned to look, sensing the tension in the air. Maya felt her cheeks flush with embarrassment. Not here, she said quietly. Come upstairs. She led him up to the apartment, acutely aware of his presence behind her. When they reached the small living room, she turned to face him, her arms crossed over her chest. Why are you here, Daniel? Because you're my wife, he said. Because you've been gone for 3 days and you won't return my calls. Because I've been worried sick about you. Maya let out a short, humorless laugh. Worried about me? You didn't seem very worried the other night when your family was talking about me like I was a liability. You didn't seem worried when I walked out and you didn't even bother to come after me. Daniel ran a hand through his hair, a gesture Maya recognized as frustration. I know I handled things badly. I know I should have defended you. But you have to understand, my family, they're not easy people. They have expectations, and when you told me about your illness, I panicked. I didn't know what to do. So your solution was to tell them at dinner, in front of everyone, without even asking me first? I was trying to explain why you've been so tired lately. They were asking questions, and I didn't know what else to say. Maya stared at him, searching his face for some sign of the man she had fallen in love with. Daniel, do you understand what you did? You announced my private medical information to people who have made it very clear that they don't like me, don't respect me, and don't think I'm good enough for you. And then you sat there and let them talk about me like I was a burden, like I was something that needed to be managed or dealt with. Daniel's jaw tightened. I said I was sorry. No, you didn't, Maya said quietly. You said you handled things badly. That's not the same thing. There was a long silence. Daniel looked around the small apartment, his eyes lingering on the modest furniture, the worn carpet, the family photos on the walls. Maya wondered what he was thinking, if he was comparing this place to his family's estate, finding it lacking. Come home, he said finally. Please, we can work through this. I'll do better, I promise. Maya wanted to believe him. She wanted so badly to believe that this was just a rough patch, that they could get through it, that the love they had once shared was strong enough to survive. But she had learned something important in the past few days, something she could not ignore. I'll come home, she said slowly. But things need to change. I need to know that you're going to be there for me, really there, not just when it's convenient. I need to know that you're going to stand up for me, even when it's hard. Can you do that? Daniel nodded quickly, relief flooding his face. Yes, of course. I'll do whatever it takes. Maya studied him for a long moment, trying to see past his words to the truth beneath them. She wanted to trust him, but something in her heart held back. Words were easy. Actions were what mattered. Okay, she said. Let me pack my things. Maya returned home with Daniel that afternoon. The townhouse felt different somehow, colder and more distant than she remembered. She unpacked her small bag and tried to settle back into her routine, but something had shifted between them, something that could not be undone. Daniel made an effort, she had to give him that. He came home earlier in the evenings. He asked about her doctor's appointments and her medication. He even suggested they skip Sunday dinner with his family, though Maya suspected this was more for his own comfort than hers. But there were signs, small ones that added up over time, that Daniel's commitment was shallow. He flinched when she mentioned her illness, as if the very word made him uncomfortable. He kept his distance when she had bad days, when the fatigue and pain made it hard for her to get out of bed. He never asked how she was feeling, not really. He asked if she was better, as if her illness was a cold that would clear up with rest and orange juice. And then there was his family. Victoria called constantly, her voice dripping with false concern that barely masked her disapproval. She asked pointed questions about Maya's condition, about the treatment costs, about whether Maya was still able to work. Each conversation left Maya feeling drained and demoralized, but Daniel insisted she answer the calls. She's just worried about us, he said. She means well. Maya knew better. Victoria Morrison did not mean well. She had made her feelings about Maya clear from the very beginning, and Maya's illness had only given her more ammunition. To Victoria, Maya was no longer just a social liability. She was a financial one too. Charlotte was even worse. She started dropping by the townhouse unannounced, always with a smile on her face and poison on her tongue. She would comment on how tired Maya looked, how pale, how thin. She would suggest expensive treatments and specialists, knowing full well that Maya could not afford them. She would leave fashion magazines on the coffee table, open to pages featuring young, beautiful, healthy women, as if to remind Maya of everything she was not. Maya endured it all with quiet dignity. She focused on her treatment, on taking care of her health, on finding moments of peace wherever she could. She talked to her grandmother on the phone every day, drawing strength from Eleanor's unwavering support. She even continued volunteering at the shelter when she was well enough, finding comfort in helping others. But inside she was crumbling. The disease progressed faster than the doctors had hoped. 3 months after her diagnosis, Maya had her first major flare-up. It came without warning, striking her down like a sudden storm. One moment she was fine, making dinner in the kitchen. The next, she was on the floor, her body racked with pain, unable to move. Daniel found her when he came home from work. He stood in the doorway of the kitchen, staring at her with an expression she would never forget. It was not fear, not exactly. It was something closer to disgust. "I'll call an ambulance," he said, his voice flat. Maya was hospitalized for 2 weeks. The doctors ran tests and adjusted her medications and tried to get the flare-up under control. It was a difficult time, filled with pain and uncertainty and long, lonely hours staring at the ceiling of her hospital room. Daniel visited, but not often. He came for an hour or 2 in the evenings, sitting by her bed and scrolling through his phone, barely speaking. When Maya tried to talk to him, really talk, he made excuses and left early. She told herself he was just scared, that seeing her like this was hard for him. But deep down, she knew it was more than that. The Morrisons visited once as a group. They came with flowers and get-well-soon cards, their smiles fixed and their eyes cold. Victoria patted Maya's hand and said something about modern medicine and the importance of staying positive. William made a comment about health insurance and the rising cost of medical care. Charlotte stood by the window and did not say anything at all, but her silence spoke volumes. After they left, Maya lay in her hospital bed and cried. Not because of her illness, not because of the pain, but because she finally understood the truth about the family she had married into. They did not see her as a person. They saw her as a problem, an inconvenience, an obstacle to be overcome. When Maya was finally released from the hospital, she was weaker than she had ever been. She could barely walk without assistance. She needed help with basic tasks like bathing and dressing. The doctors said it would take time for her to recover from the flare-up, that she would need to rest and let her body heal. Daniel hired a nurse, a kind young woman named Rosa who came during the day while he was at work. Maya was grateful for Rosa's help and companionship, but she could not help noticing that Daniel seemed relieved to have someone else taking care of her. He spent less and less time at home, working late almost every night, coming to bed long after Maya had fallen asleep. One evening, about a month after her release from the hospital, Maya overheard a phone conversation that changed everything. She had been resting in the bedroom, drifting in and out of sleep, when she heard Daniel's voice coming from down the hall. He was in his study, the door slightly ajar, talking on the phone. Maya could not make out most of the words, but a few phrases came through clearly. "I don't know how much more of this I can take." A pause. "No, the doctors say she might not fully recover." Another pause, longer this time. I know what you said, but I made a commitment. I married her." His voice dropped lower. "Just give me some time. I'll figure something out." Maya felt her blood run cold. She lay very still, barely breathing, her mind racing. Who was he talking to? What was he trying to figure out? The implications of his words settled over her like a shroud. She did not confront him that night. She was too weak, too tired, too afraid of what his answer might be. But she began paying closer attention, watching and listening, gathering evidence of the truth she had been too naive to see. Daniel was pulling away from her, not just emotionally but practically. She noticed that he had stopped adding money to the joint account they used for household expenses. She noticed that bills were piling up on his desk, unopened and unpaid. She noticed that he was spending more time away from home, more time with his family, more time on his phone with people whose voices she did not recognize. And then there was the way he looked at her. Or rather, the way he did not look at her. He could not meet her eyes anymore. When they were in the same room, he found reasons to be somewhere else. When she tried to touch him, he flinched away. It was as if she had become invisible to him, a ghost haunting his life, an unwelcome reminder of responsibilities he no longer wanted. One night, Maya forced herself out of bed and down the hall to Daniel's study. She stood in the doorway watching him work, summoning the courage to speak. "Daniel," she said quietly. He looked up, startled. "Maya, you should be in bed. You need to rest. I need to talk to you." She moved into the room, her legs unsteady, and sat down in the chair across from his desk. "I need to know what's happening to us." Daniel leaned back in his chair, his expression guarded. "What do you mean?" "Nothing is happening. You're sick. I'm working. That's all." "That's not all." Maya's voice was stronger now, fueled by the anger and hurt that had been building inside her for months. "You're pulling away from me, Daniel. I can feel it. You barely speak to me anymore. You can't even look at me. And I heard you on the phone the other night, talking about how you didn't know how much more of this you could take." Something flickered in Daniel's eyes. Fear, perhaps, or guilt. "You were listening to my private conversation?" "It was hard not to. And don't try to turn this around on me. I have a right to know what's going on in my own marriage." Daniel was silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was cold. "Fine. You want to know the truth? Here it is. I didn't sign up for this, Maya. I married a healthy woman, someone who was going to be my partner, who was going to help me build a life. I didn't marry an invalid who needs a nurse and can barely get out of bed." Maya felt like she had been punched in the stomach. "An invalid? Is that what you think I am?" "I think you're sick," Daniel said flatly. "Really, truly sick. And it's not going to get better. The doctors have made that clear. So what am I supposed to do? Watch you waste away year after year? Put my whole life on hold to take care of someone who might never be able to take care of me? That's what marriage is," Maya said, her voice breaking. "In sickness and in health. Those were the vows we took." Daniel laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "Vows. Easy words to say when everything is good. But you didn't warn me about this. You didn't tell me you had some genetic time bomb ticking inside you, waiting to go off." "I didn't know," Maya whispered. "I had no idea. And that's supposed to make it okay? I'm supposed to sacrifice my future because of something neither of us knew about." Daniel shook his head. "I'm sorry, Maya. I really am. But this isn't what I wanted. This isn't the life I planned." Maya sat very still, absorbing his words like blows. She had known, on some level, that this was coming. She had felt his withdrawal, his resentment, his growing distance. But hearing him say it out loud, hearing him dismiss their marriage, their vows, their love as if it meant nothing, was more painful than any symptom of her disease. "So what happens now?" she asked quietly. Daniel would not meet her eyes. "I don't know," he said. "I need time to think." Maya stood up slowly, her body aching with the effort. "Take all the time you need," she said. "But know this, Daniel. I never asked for this illness. I never wanted it. And if you can't stand by me through this, then maybe I was wrong about you all along." She walked out of the study without looking back, making her way to the bedroom on legs that felt like they might give out at any moment. She collapsed onto the bed and stared at the ceiling, her mind spinning. Everything she had believed about her marriage was falling apart. The man she had loved, The man she had trusted with her heart and her future was abandoning her when she needed him most. And his family, those cold, cruel people who had never accepted her, were probably celebrating. Maya thought about her grandmother, about the unconditional love Eleanor had always given her. She thought about the shelter where she had volunteered, about the homeless people she had helped, people who had lost everything but still found the strength to keep going. She thought about her own strength, the resilience that had carried her through so many hard times before. She was not going to let Daniel Morrison break her. She was not going to let his family's cruelty define her worth. She was sick, yes. She was struggling, yes. But she was still Maya Chen, and she was a fighter. The next morning, Maya called her grandmother and told her everything. Eleanor listened in silence, her breath steady and calm on the other end of the line. When Maya finished, Eleanor spoke. "Come home," she said simply. "Come back to the bakery. You don't need to stay there with people who don't love you." "But, Grandma, the treatments are here. My doctors are here. I can't just leave." "There are doctors everywhere," Eleanor said firmly. "What you need right now isn't fancy treatments and expensive specialists. What you need is love, real love, from people who care about you. You can get better here just as well as there. Better, probably, because you won't have that family dragging you down." Maya closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks. The thought of leaving, of giving up on her marriage, terrified her. But the thought of staying, of enduring more months or years of Daniel's indifference and his family's cruelty, was even worse. "I'll think about it," she said. "I need some time. Take all the time you need, sweetheart. But remember, you always have a home here. No matter what happens, you always have me." Maya spent the next few weeks in a kind of limbo, going through the motions of daily life while her heart and mind wrestled with an impossible decision. Daniel continued to work late and avoid her, but he did not bring up the conversation they had had in his study, and Maya did not push. She was too tired, too drained by her illness and her grief to fight. Then something happened that pushed her over the edge. It was a Sunday afternoon, and Daniel had gone to his parents' house for dinner, leaving Maya alone. She had declined to go, citing fatigue, and Daniel had not argued. As soon as he left, Maya felt a wave of relief wash over her. The tension of being around him, of feeling his disapproval and disappointment, was exhausting. She was sitting in the living room, reading a book, when her phone buzzed with a text message. It was from a number she did not recognize, but the message made her blood run cold. "Thought you should know what your husband is really up to. Check his email. Password is your wedding date." Maya stared at the message, her heart pounding. Could be a prank, she told herself. Could be someone trying to cause trouble. But something compelled her to act, a gut feeling she could not ignore. She went to Daniel's study and opened his laptop. Her hands were shaking as she typed in the password, their wedding date, and watched as his email inbox appeared on the screen. What she found destroyed the last remnants of her faith in her marriage. There were emails to his mother discussing divorce lawyers and asset protection strategies. There were emails to Charlotte, containing cruel jokes about Maya's illness and speculation about how long it would be before she was out of the picture. There were emails to a woman named Sarah, filled with flirtation and innuendo and plans to meet up when Daniel was in the city. But the worst email, the one that made Maya feel like the ground was opening up beneath her, was from a family attorney. It was dated 2 weeks ago and outlined the process for filing for divorce on the grounds of fraudulent concealment. The attorney explained that Daniel might be able to argue that Maya had hidden her illness from him before they married, that she had tricked him into a union he never would have agreed to if he had known the truth. Maya read the email 3 times, unable to believe what she was seeing. Daniel was not just thinking about leaving her. He was actively planning it, working with lawyers to find a way out of their marriage that would leave him looking like the victim. She closed the laptop and sat in silence, her mind reeling. Everything made sense now. His distance, his coldness, his family's increased hostility. They were not just unhappy with her illness. They were preparing to get rid of her. Maya did not cry. She was beyond tears now, beyond anger, beyond despair. She felt something else instead, something that surprised her. She felt a strange kind of peace. All her doubts, all her second-guessing, all her hope that maybe things would get better, evaporated in an instant. She knew now, with absolute certainty, what she needed to do. She was going to leave, not because Daniel wanted her to, but because she deserved better. She deserved a life filled with love and kindness and support, not cruelty and abandonment. She deserved to spend whatever time she had left surrounded by people who truly cared about her. She was going home, to her grandmother, to the bakery, to the life she had left behind. And this time she was not going to look back. Maya stood up from Daniel's desk and went to pack her things. She did not take much, just her clothes, her books, and a few personal items that held meaning for her. She left her wedding ring on the kitchen counter, a silent message that needed no explanation. As she walked out the front door of the townhouse for the last time, Maya felt something shift inside her. The weight she had been carrying for months, the burden of trying to save a marriage that could not be saved, lifted from her shoulders. She was sick, yes. She was alone, yes. But she was also free. And, for the first time in a very long time, that felt like enough. Maya arrived at her grandmother's bakery just as the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. She stood outside for a moment, looking up at the old building that had been her first home, the place where she had learned to bake bread and frost cupcakes and believe in the goodness of people. The sign above the door, Sweet Dreams, was faded now, but the warm light spilling from the windows was as welcoming as ever. Eleanor must have been watching for her because the door opened before Maya could even reach for the handle. Her grandmother stood there, small and strong and steady, her arms already open wide. "Welcome home, sweetheart," Eleanor said, pulling Maya into an embrace. Maya buried her face in her grandmother's shoulder and, finally, allowed herself to cry. All the tears she had been holding back, all the pain and disappointment and grief, poured out of her in great, heaving sobs. Eleanor held her through it all, stroking her hair and murmuring words of comfort, never once letting go. When Maya's tears finally subsided, Eleanor guided her upstairs to the apartment and sat her down at the kitchen table. She made tea, strong and sweet, just the way Maya liked it, and set a plate of fresh cookies in front of her. "Eat," Eleanor commanded. "Then rest. Tomorrow we'll figure everything out. But tonight you just need to be." Maya did as she was told. She ate cookies and drank tea and let her grandmother fuss over her, arranging pillows and blankets, making sure she was comfortable. And when she finally lay down in her old bed, surrounded by the familiar smells and sounds of her childhood home, she fell into the deepest, most peaceful sleep she had experienced in months. The next morning, Maya woke to the sound of activity in the bakery below. She lay still for a moment, listening to the rhythmic thud of dough being kneaded, the clatter of baking trays, the soft murmur of her grandmother humming an old song. These sounds, so simple and ordinary, filled her with a warmth she had almost forgotten existed. She got up slowly, her body stiff and sore from the journey and the emotional toll of the previous day. She dressed in comfortable clothes and made her way downstairs, where Eleanor was already hard at work. "There you are," Eleanor said, looking up with a smile. "How did you sleep?" "Better than I have in weeks," Maya admitted. "Maybe months." Eleanor nodded as if this was exactly what she had expected. "Good. Now, come help me with these croissants. They won't shape themselves." They worked side by side in comfortable silence, falling into a rhythm that felt as natural as breathing. Maya had not realized how much she had missed this. The simple pleasure of creating something with her hands, the satisfaction of watching dough transform into golden, flaky pastries. It was meditative, healing, exactly what she needed. As the morning rush began and customers started filing in, Maya took her place behind the counter. She greeted regulars she had known since childhood, people who remembered her as the little girl who used to hand out free samples and sweep the floors. They asked about her life, her health, her marriage, and Maya answered as honestly as she could without breaking down. "I'm back home for a while," she told them. "Just taking some time to focus on getting better." Most people accepted this explanation without question, offering sympathy and support and promises to stop by more often. A few looked at her with concern in their eyes, noting how thin she had become, how pale. But no one pushed for more than Maya was willing to share. By the end of the day, Maya was exhausted but content. There was something deeply satisfying about honest work, about serving people and seeing them smile, about being part of a community that cared about her. It was a world away from the cold, judgmental atmosphere of the Morrison household. That evening, as Maya and Eleanor sat down to a simple dinner of soup and fresh bread, Maya finally found the courage to tell her grandmother everything. She told her about the emails she had found, about Daniel's plans to divorce her, about the cruelty and indifference she had endured. Eleanor listened without interrupting, her expression growing darker with each revelation. When Maya finished, Eleanor reached across the table and took her hand. "I'm proud of you," she said quietly. Maya was surprised. "Proud of me? For what?" "For failing at my marriage. For having the courage to leave," Eleanor said firmly. "For recognizing that you deserved better and taking steps to find it. That takes more strength than you know." Maya shook her head. "I don't feel strong. I feel broken." "You're not broken," Eleanor said. "You're hurt, yes. You're dealing with things no one should have to deal with. But you are not broken. You're still here, still fighting, still moving forward. That's what matters." They sat in silence for a moment, holding hands across the table. Then Eleanor spoke again. "Maya, there's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you a long time ago." Maya looked at her grandmother, confused by the serious tone in her voice. "What is it?" Eleanor hesitated, as if gathering her thoughts. "It's about your parents. About what really happened to them." Maya felt her heart begin to race. She had always been told that her parents died in a car accident when she was 3 years old. It was a simple story, a tragic one, but it had never seemed like there was more to tell. "What do you mean?" she asked slowly. Eleanor took a deep breath. "Your parents did die in a car accident. That part is true. But there's more to the story, things I kept from you because I thought it would be easier. I thought I was protecting you. But now, given everything you're going through, I think you deserve to know the truth." Maya waited, her hands trembling slightly in her grandmother's grasp. "Your mother, my daughter Sarah, was not just a baker's daughter," Eleanor began. "She was also the daughter of a man named Henry Wallace. Henry was my first husband before I married your grandfather. We were young, too young, and the marriage didn't last. Henry came from a wealthy family, very wealthy, but I didn't care about that. I married him for love. When things fell apart, I left with nothing but Sarah and my pride." Maya listened in stunned silence. She had never heard any of this before. She had always assumed her grandmother had been married only once, to her grandfather who had died before Maya was born. Eleanor continued, her voice steady but heavy with old emotion. "Henry went on to become very successful. He built a business empire, made billions. But he never forgot about Sarah. When she grew up and married your father, Henry wanted to make amends. He wanted to be part of their lives, to be part of your life. He set up a trust fund, a substantial one, for Sarah and her children." "A trust fund," Maya repeated, struggling to process what she was hearing. "Yes, but Sarah didn't want his money. She was proud like me. She felt that Henry had abandoned us, that his sudden interest in our lives was too little, too late. She told him to leave us alone, and he did. But he didn't dissolve the trust. He kept it active, hoping that one day Sarah would change her mind." Eleanor paused, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "And then the accident happened. Sarah and your father were killed, and you were left alone. I took you in, raised you as my own. But I didn't tell you about Henry or the trust. I thought it would complicate things, that it was better for you to grow up without the burden of that kind of wealth. Maya's mind was spinning. Are you saying there's money? That my mother left me money? Eleanor nodded slowly. Henry died about 10 years ago. He never remarried, never had other children. In his will, he left everything to the trust he had set up for Sarah and her descendants. And, since Sarah is gone, that money goes to you, Maya. You're his only heir. Maya shook her head in disbelief. How much money are we talking about? Eleanor was silent for a long moment. Then, she said very quietly, $10 billion. The words hung in the air between them, impossible and surreal. $10 billion. It was a number Maya could not even begin to comprehend. It was the kind of money that belonged to other people, to celebrities and tycoons and royalty, not to a sick woman who had just walked away from a failing marriage. That can't be right, Maya said. There must be some mistake. There's no mistake, Eleanor said. I have all the documentation. I've kept it safe for years, waiting for the right time to tell you. And I think, given everything that's happened, now is that time. Maya sat back in her chair, her mind reeling. She thought about Daniel and his family, about the way they had looked at her like she was worthless, like she was a burden they couldn't wait to be rid of. She thought about the emails she had read, the cruel jokes, the dismissive comments about her illness and her background. They had treated her like she was nothing, like she had nothing to offer. And all along, she had been worth more than all of them combined. Why didn't you tell me before? Maya asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Eleanor sighed heavily. I told myself I was protecting you. I thought that growing up with that kind of wealth would change you, would make you different from the kind, compassionate person I wanted you to be. And I was afraid that if people knew about the money, they would treat you differently. That you would never know who really loved you for you. Maya understood her grandmother's reasoning, even if she did not entirely agree with it. She thought about her marriage to Daniel, about how his family had looked down on her for being poor. Would they have treated her differently if they had known about the inheritance? Would Daniel have stayed by her side through her illness if he had known she was worth billions? The thought made her feel sick. She did not want to be loved for her money. She wanted to be loved for herself, for her kindness and her courage and her heart. And clearly Daniel and his family were incapable of that kind of love. What do I do now? Maya asked. Eleanor squeezed her hand. That's up to you, sweetheart. The money is yours. You can do whatever you want with it. You can use it to get the best medical care available. You can use it to help others. You can use it to start a new life, far away from people who hurt you. The choice is entirely yours. Maya looked down at their joined hands, her grandmother's skin wrinkled and spotted with age, her own thin and pale from illness. Two women, connected by blood and love and shared history, facing an uncertain future together. I need time to think, Maya said finally. This is a lot to process. Of course, Eleanor said. Take all the time you need. The money isn't going anywhere. That night, Maya lay awake in her childhood bed, staring at the ceiling and trying to make sense of everything she had learned. $10 billion. It was an astronomical sum, more money than she could ever spend in a lifetime. It was enough to change the world, or at least her corner of it. But what did she really want? What would make her happy, truly happy? She thought about her work at the homeless shelter, about the faces of the people she had helped over the years. She thought about the community center she had always dreamed of opening, a place where underprivileged youth could find support and resources and hope. She thought about all the good she could do, all the lives she could change, with the resources now at her disposal. And then she thought about the Morrisons, about Victoria's cold eyes and Charlotte's cruel smile, about Daniel's betrayal and his family's contempt. They had made her feel worthless, undeserving, less than human. They had ridiculed her for her illness and her background, never knowing that she was wealthier than all of them put together. There was a part of Maya, a small but insistent part, that wanted revenge. She wanted to see the looks on their faces when they discovered the truth. She wanted them to regret every harsh word, every dismissive glance, every cruel joke made at her expense. But another part of her, the part that had been raised by Eleanor Chun in a small apartment above a bakery, knew that revenge was not the answer. It would not heal her broken heart. It would not cure her illness. It would not bring her the peace and happiness she so desperately craved. No, Maya decided. She would not use her newfound wealth for revenge. She would use it for something better, something bigger, something that would make a real difference in the world. She would honor her mother's memory by being the kind of person her mother would have been proud of. The next morning, Maya told Eleanor about her decision. She wanted to transfer some of the money into accounts that would ensure her grandmother never had to worry about anything again. She wanted to pay for the best medical treatment available, to fight her illness with every resource at her disposal. And she wanted to start planning for the community center, to turn her childhood dream into a reality. Eleanor listened with tears in her eyes, nodding along. "That's my girl," she said. "That's exactly what your mother would have wanted." But before Maya could do any of that, she needed to deal with one last piece of unfinished business. She needed to officially end her marriage to Daniel Morrison. She had left her wedding ring on the kitchen counter when she walked out of the townhouse, but she had not filed for divorce. She had been too tired, too overwhelmed, too focused on getting back to her grandmother. But now, with the truth about her inheritance laid bare, she knew she could not put it off any longer. She contacted a lawyer, one recommended by the attorneys who managed her trust fund. His name was Jonathan Reed, and he was one of the best divorce lawyers in the country. When Maya explained her situation, he listened carefully, asking questions and taking notes. "This is a fairly straightforward case," Jonathan said when she had finished. "You have grounds for divorce based on emotional abandonment and your husband's documented plans to file against you on fraudulent grounds. We can also pursue damages for emotional distress if you'd like." Maya shook her head. "I don't want to drag this out. I just want it to be over." Jonathan nodded. "Understandable. Given your financial situation, which I assume you want to keep private for now, we can structure this in a way that doesn't reveal your inheritance. Your husband and his family don't need to know about the trust until you're ready for them to know." Maya appreciated Jonathan's discretion. The last thing she wanted was for Daniel and his family to find out about the money before the divorce was finalized. She could only imagine how quickly their attitude would change if they knew she was worth billions. The divorce process began in earnest. Daniel was served papers at his office and, according to Jonathan, his reaction was one of shock and confusion. He had apparently expected Maya to come crawling back, not to file for divorce before he could file first. Within days, Daniel started calling and texting, demanding explanations, accusing Maya of overreacting, insisting that they could work things out. Maya did not respond to any of his messages. She had nothing left to say to him. Daniel's family reacted predictably. Victoria called the bakery, her voice dripping with condescension, suggesting that Maya was making a terrible mistake and would regret abandoning her son. Charlotte sent a series of nasty text messages, calling Maya ungrateful and selfish and pathetic. William, ever the businessman, tried to negotiate, offering a financial settlement that was laughably small compared to what Maya now knew she was worth. Through it all, Maya remained calm. She let Jonathan handle the communications, let the legal process unfold as it should, and focused on her health and her plans for the future. She started treatment at a world-renowned medical center, flying in specialists and accessing experimental therapies that showed promise for her condition. She began working with architects and urban planners to design her community center. She spent her days helping her grandmother in the bakery and her evenings studying philanthropy and nonprofit management. For the first time in a very long time, Maya felt hopeful. But the Morrisons were not finished with her yet. One afternoon, about 2 months after Maya had moved back to the bakery, a large black car pulled up outside. Maya was behind the counter, helping a customer, when she saw Daniel step out of the driver's seat. Her heart began to race, but she kept her composure, finishing with the customer before turning to face her soon-to-be ex-husband. Daniel looked different. He was thinner than she remembered, and There were lines around his eyes that had not been there before. He walked into the bakery with an expression that was part anger, part desperation. "Maya, we need to talk," he said. Maya glanced at the few customers scattered around the shop, then at her grandmother, who had appeared from the back room with a rolling pin in her hand and a fierce expression on her face. "Fine," Maya said, "but not here. There's a park across the street." They walked in silence to the park and sat on a bench overlooking a small pond. It was a beautiful day, sunny and warm, but Maya could not enjoy it. Being this close to Daniel, the man who had promised to love her forever and then abandoned her when she needed him most, made her skin crawl. "I don't understand what's happening," Daniel said, his voice strained. "One minute we're married, the next you're gone, and I'm getting divorce papers. What did I do wrong?" Maya stared at him in disbelief. "What did you do wrong? Are you serious?" "Yes, I'm serious. I know things weren't perfect between us, but I thought we were going to work through it. I thought you understood that I needed time to adjust." "Time to adjust?" Maya repeated slowly. "Daniel, do you hear yourself? I was diagnosed with a chronic illness. I needed your support, your love, your partnership. And instead, you pulled away. You couldn't even look at me. You let your family treat me like garbage. And then I found the emails." Daniel's face went pale. "What emails?" "The ones to your mother and Charlotte mocking my illness and planning how to get rid of me. The ones to your lawyer, discussing how to divorce me for fraudulent concealment. The ones to Sarah, whoever she is, making plans to meet up." Maya's voice was steady, but her hands were shaking in her lap. "Did you think I wouldn't find out? Did you think you could scheme behind my back and I would never know?" Daniel was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely audible. "I can explain." "I don't want explanations," Maya said. "I don't want excuses. What I want is for you to sign the divorce papers and let me move on with my life." "And what about me?" Daniel demanded. "What about my life? Do you have any idea what it's been like? Dealing with your illness? Dealing with my family's pressure? Dealing with all of it? What it's been like for you?" Maya felt a surge of anger so intense it took her breath away. "Daniel, I'm the one who's sick. I'm the one who spent 2 weeks in the hospital. I'm the one whose husband couldn't be bothered to show up most days. And you want to talk about what it's been like for you?" Daniel ran a hand through his hair, a gesture Maya had once found endearing but now just irritated her. "Look, I know I made mistakes. I know I could have handled things better. But I still care about you, Maya. I don't want our marriage to end like this." Maya studied his face, searching for any sign of genuine remorse, genuine love. But all she saw was desperation, the panic of a man who had lost control of a situation and was scrambling to regain it. "Why?" she asked quietly. "Why don't you want it to end? Because you love me? Or because it would look bad for you and your family?" Daniel did not answer, and his silence told Maya everything she needed to know. She stood up from the bench. "Sign the papers, Daniel. Let me go. It's the kindest thing you can do for both of us." She walked away without looking back, leaving him sitting alone in the park. She did not know if he would sign the papers or if he would fight her. She did not know what new obstacles the Morrisons might throw in her path. But she did know one thing with absolute certainty. She was done being a victim. She was done letting other people dictate her worth. She was Maya Chun, granddaughter of a baker, daughter of a mother who had loved her, heir to a fortune she had never known existed. And she was just getting started. When she returned to the bakery, Eleanor was waiting for her with a cup of tea and a worried expression. "How did it go?" she asked. Maya sat down at the little table in the corner and wrapped her hands around the warm cup. "I think he finally understands that I'm serious. Whether he'll actually sign the papers, I don't know. But I said what I needed to say." Eleanor nodded approvingly. "Good. Now we have more important things to think about. I've been looking at some properties for your community center. I found a few options I think you'll like." Maya smiled, her first real smile in what felt like forever. Here was her grandmother, 72 years old, diving into research and planning for a project that would benefit thousands of young people. This was what love looked like. This was what support meant. "Show me," Maya said. "Let's make this dream come true." And so, amid the sweet smell of bread and the warmth of family love, Maya began to build a new life. Not the life she had expected, not the life she had planned, but a life that was truly her own, shaped by her choices and her values, not by the expectations of people who had never valued her worth. The divorce papers arrived at Daniel's lawyer's office the next week, signed reluctantly, but finally, Maya was free, and she was only just beginning to discover what that freedom meant.